We're going to talk about bridging the gap between marketing and experience, align marketing initiative with ever-changing landscape of CX, and Brittany Wilson, Director of Marketing, Haventry Bank. So welcome.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
All right. So tell us a little bit more about yourself and where you come from and where you've been and where you're going.
Absolutely. Well, I started my career at a trampoline company, an actual trampoline company, the ones you jump up and down at. So like a little bit different than the financial services space, but I like to say they were both up and down businesses. It's my one trampoline joke, I swear. And then I spent the last 10 years of my career over at Tangerine Bank, and then have very recently joined the Haventry Group yeah. Hair always
I don't have enough hair, so that doesn't cause a problem. So,
and then I joined Haventry as their director of marketing very recently. But all three of the companies that I've worked for have had the opportunity. They've been a little bit smaller teams, which means lots of opportunity for collaboration. So CX and marketing have always been closely connected in my worlds.
Absolutely. Well, and I like to say I've been in CX for 25 plus years, but never in the same kind of department for more than 5. Because I was in marketing, I was started call centers and product and pricing and in IT and in digital. So CX is everywhere. So it's a big part
100%.
of it. 100%. Absolutely. So let's kind of jump in here. So as we think about, the intersection of marketing and customer experience, why is that so critical in your mind?
So, if you take it back to the old, the marketing 101s, and it's like, what is marketing? And everyone loves the ad side of it and the logo side of it and someone telling them that your color usage is wrong. But yet marketing is the steward of the brands at many companies, but majority of the brand doesn't live in marketing. It lives in the experiences that you are creating and what you understand and learn from CX, what you understand from your client experience partners. And the things that we create from that information has the opportunity to fulfill the promise of a brand, or you have an unfulfilled promise of a brand where now what you're saying and the experience that your clients or customers are getting are disconnected.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and so, going on a little bit further there, so as we think about the how to do this, right? How to integrate marketing with customer experience, what strategies have you found the most successful in that?
I think there's a couple, and one, it sounds so basic, but it is important, and it's this idea of communication, but it can't be communication in the sit in the room and have someone talk about what the CX strategy is. It has to be the day-to-day understanding as marketers of what are each of those flows. It is sitting down with those, whether it's your call centers, whether it's your mobile app experience, whether it's your web experience, and pushing and understanding that space where giving context as to maybe why this doesn't feel right with the brand that you're creating, maybe why it does feel right and this is opportunity to expand, but also it's the opportunity to get inspiration because your experience is that opportunity to deliver an experience for clients and customers.
Yeah, we talk about this marketing and how broad even marketing. We talk about AI. I brought it in, but no, how broad it is. But marketing obviously is extremely broad, and there's so many components. In fact, I remember growing up, there was a show. Anybody old enough to remember that show, 30 Something? And they were advertisers, and everything was about. It was so much fun. I was like, oh, I'm going to be an advertiser. I'm going to be marketing and advertising. And then I found out that for 20 years, or for the first 5 years, you have to put logos on mugs. Mm-hmm. That was what marketing was. It's not always the glamorous. So, but to your point, you got to support what your brand is through the experience. So how do you make sure? It sounds like in many ways marketing has to be kind of a gatekeeper in some ways. What are your thoughts about that?
I always like to stay away from gatekeeping, I think, when it comes to all, but absolutely it has to be connected to all of it as we move it forward. And so when we think of the marketing integration through client experience, it is these relationships and opportunities because marketing is also hearing from the client, and often they're also hearing from the potential client. And it's this space where we're potentially getting one set of data, and our CX folks are also gathering their data. And how are you bringing those together to say, are these matching? Are they separate? I always like to think of, is the customer you have the customer you want? So is your CX team hearing all of this information from your current client base, but your marketing team's hearing from the potential client base that you want, and it's not matching up? And that's where that coming together and having that understanding is so important, because are you actually both reaching out to the same people and establishing that way forward together?
So for someone who's more on the true traditional CX or even the customer support side, when you say you're hearing from customers from marketing, talk a little bit more about that. What does that look like for you guys?
Well, I think, and again, you joke CX can live in so many places. You think of your social folks and your social teams. Often that department is sitting within your marketing space. So they are hearing the day-to-day feedbacks from your clients, and everyone loves to leave a comment when they're unhappy. So your marketing folks are hearing a lot of those comments as well. But you also have big research, I would say, that's happening, especially in the space that I came from within brand. We're having in-depth conversations with clients because we want to know if we're living up to that promise. Do they believe what we're saying? It's like that information's coming in, and it's that in-depth conversation that, and in some ways, actually, in my history, my CX partners weren't getting. They were getting those one-off bits of feedback, whereas I had this opportunity to then have these in-depth conversations. Well, if we're working together, I'm trying to dig into those little bits of feedback, and I can have this opportunity to have these in-depth conversations with long-term clients sometimes in this research space to understand, are we focused on the right experiences that we're improving, or are we improving experiences that we think people want improved, but actually that's not what they're worried about.
Yeah, well, and I think the key is, even in the X space, the experience space, we perpetuate a lot of our own silos too within that. You've got UX teams that have that data. You got, like you're talking about, market research. You got social. You got traditional CX, and the reality is, that all has to come together too, because to that point, it's about all the different touch points that really make the overall experience. So as you look through that, what have you, knowing that it's this diverse, what have you specifically found most effective in kind of connecting, specific examples of connecting marketing with customer experience?
Absolutely. So I think that your customer experience can be this exciting, marketable thing. It is beyond the product. An example for myself was through our understanding of client experience and actually how much clients loved our client experience at one point. That was the inspiration and the jumping off point for a large brand campaign that was all about making better experiences, and that we delivered on these better experiences. And it was played off this idea of, jumping through hoops. And no one likes to jump through hoops.
You said you weren't going to talk about trampolines anymore.
Different jumping. But in that knowledge of jumping through hoops, it, funny enough, had this opportunity to bring an internal conversation forward, which then became, after this jumped, any meeting you'd go into and you were talking about a client experience, it was like, feels like a lot of hoops. It feels like we just made that more difficult. It feels like there's all this opportunity to actually make it less difficult. And that's where I think it also, hopefully, for my team members in client experience, opened a door for the conversation of experience to say, actually, we've now made this promise externally that we want to deliver on the best experience. So we now have to deliver on that. So let's have these conversations with all and make sure that we're taking this information to really create the best experiences possible.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to, I think, if you're in customer experience or customer support or any of those roles, one of your best partners can be marketing. Because to your point, they need, stories. You need stories. You need to be able to really represent the brand, and that's where, bringing some of that other data together is. So definitely don't wait for your marketing team to, come get it, be a partner and bring it to you. So when you look at that kind of, how have you seen it? Is it more push or pull for you, or how has it been in your partnerships with CX teams?
I think there we go. I think it obviously always depends on the people. I would say I overall have been super lucky in my career that I've had incredible CX partners. But I also, as much as we have the positive stories, things that inspire, I also have strong memories of experiences where people wanted to market the CX expectation, not the CX reality. So grand ideas of what was going to be delivered, grand ideas of what we were going to be putting forward and how we were going to bring all of these incredible experiences to life. And then marketing's building big campaigns around it. reality didn't quite match. And I think this idea of your MVP of your minimum viable product might not be your minimum marketable viable product. And that's where sometimes the two do not always connect. And what we've learned from experience to what we build as an experience, what we deliver, give it time before it's the thing that you potentially are putting out there and marketing to your base.
Yeah, your MVP isn't always your MVP.
Yeah.
So, again, ultimately, we're all here to build customer loyalty.
Yes.
There's brand loyalty, more from a marketing standpoint. There's customer loyalty, reducing churn, et cetera, which is everybody's responsibility. So, if that's really where our focus is, taking this now more specifically from a marketing perspective, what should marketing organizations focus on to really amplify the customer experience and create more lasting impressions?
For sure. I think loyalty often comes from not the initial, but from obviously that ongoing deepening relationship. And in particular, I think where there's this huge space that I don't find a lot of brands really play into, especially in the financial space. I feel like we don't like to admit when something's not great. And we're just like, oh, it's fine. We'll keep going. But there's this marketable opportunity for, hey, have we taken in information from our clients? We've learned something. We've improved or fixed that experience. But are we telling them that we did that? And the act of telling them that, hey, we've heard you, we fixed it, we've made this better, is something we should actually be marketing, because that's loyalty. That's, oh, this is a relationship now. You asked me about something, I told you about something, you listened to that something, you fixed that something, and now you're telling me it's been fixed, and now I want to tell you more. And maybe I want to tell you about some of the good stuff now too, as well as, the things that are challenges. I think when we think about building loyalty, that's where a lot of client experience and marketing can connect together to close the loop on that feedback.
Yeah, we talk about that in CX circles all the time about, if someone gives you a bad score, a bad survey, closing the loop. But to your point, improvements at the corporate level require a corporate response, a marketing response from that perspective. And that sounds a little bit self-righteous a little bit, but how do you really position, when you think about positioning that and thinking about this group here who's got wins they want to talk about, how do you look at that marketing and turning that into something great?
For sure. Well, if you think about it, we're never shy away from sharing happy testimonials. We love sharing a great testimonial, but how much more authentic and honest is it to share, here's the bad stuff, but guess what? We did something with the bad stuff.
Yeah.
And I know often in CX it's talking about closing the loop with the individual who gave the feedback, but chances are, and so many of the chats we've heard today, there was the silence group. There's the people who didn't say anything, but were actually still having that bad experience. And maybe if they haven't fully given up on you yet, it's the opportunity to say, someone else told us, and we fixed it. So how do we talk about it more broadly? And it doesn't have to be shouting from the rooftop. Like, these can be simple things, but, admitting that you've made these improvements and opportunities. And I think there's some brands that do it really well, where it's just almost like public release notes, where it's like, hey, here's what's changing, and we fixed these things, and it's information, and people know how to find it. There's some things that are bigger. You look at a brand, a pizza brand like Domino's, who, publicly did a giant marketing campaign about the fact that, we know we weren't doing great. We're doing better now. You can take it from the small to the large, but I think that's an opportunity where how your client feels and what their experience have been can be this great marketing space.
Absolutely. So what do you recommend then that marketing leaders do to be proactive in aligning with CX? So, from that perspective, what did you do and what would you recommend others? Because I know there are definitely some marketing folks here too.
For sure. Well, I think there's, if we take it down to at the top, we're all heading into a new year, a new plan. Understand what you both are working on. And if there's new experiences coming and new opportunities coming, make sure that you're not selling the checking account when the experience for the savings account is the one that's being redone. How can we align these things? Because you only get one chance at going out to your client. So make sure that when you're driving them, wherever you're driving them, they're getting the best experience possible, because that's your chance. You might get another one down the road, but really there's one, not to quote Eminem, there's one shot. But it's this space where you can really align that together, align your plans together. I think as marketing leaders, really sitting down, as I said it earlier, but I'll be repetitive in it. When we talk about that open communication, it's not the big picture, it is the small picture. You know, if you're being invited to sit through long deep dives, or as you're doing call listening, be there, understand it, challenge it, understand, does the brand that you've created and you've promised ladder to what we're hearing, or is there disconnect there? Because that should be telling you, is there something up with the brand? Is there something up with the experience? To then guide those conversations further. So you're speaking at and in the detail. And I think getting into the minutia is really important sometimes, because the more you're in it in the understanding it in the upfront, as you move forward together as a business, you're going to be able to have bigger conversations because you understand the detail of it. As a marketer.
Well, so I'm curious, raise a hand if you listen to calls for your company at least monthly. Raise your hand if you do. Not very many, but a handful. Obviously, the folks over here that live and breathe it. But I love that you brought that up, because again, some of the best companies I've worked for mandated top-down. CEOs would sit in and calibrate and listen to calls. I think it's something we, in many cases, have gotten away from. Yeah. I mean, that goes back to blocking and tackling, the foundation of. So I actually want to pull that string a little bit. So tell me a little bit more about how you're doing that, especially in that context with Haventree.
For sure, and I think Haventree, obviously, I'm a new space, newer at, but with in my previous employer, I think call listening when you're just doing drop-ins is one side of it, but having great partners that are pulling together themes that are coming through, so you can listen to this is everyone calling in about product X. And this is what we're hearing. Because inevitably you're going to hear multiple themes, you're going to hear different things, you're going to hear different experiences based on, what client segmentation is. And it's eye-opening, and it should be eye-opening. And sometimes you do get happy ones where I didn't think that was great. I love that people love that. Or you do really see where you have your pitfalls and where you're falling flat. And I think, yes, just listening in randomly, sometimes you luck out and you get the magic information, but you do have folks often, and there are teams where they are in this day to day, so let them bring forward those themes. And I think, if you can have monthly themes, also bring forward, say, hey, this is the thing I'd love to know, are people calling in about this? I had an experience once where we were talking about campaigns in market, and we thought everything's hunky-dory. Who's giving feedback on this? And we all sat in, marketing listened, and we're like, oh, well, we're making their lives way more difficult than it needs to be. So not only is our call center's life is more difficult, we're making our clients' life more difficult, and we don't have to be. There's a simple solution for this. So having the information, having the knowledge, you're going to improve it. And then as we were building the next campaign, guess what we did? We made sure our call center partners were sitting in with us during planning to say, hey, we think this makes it easier. Does it make it easier? And then we made part of our KPIs and our measurement, hearing from our friends at the call center and saying, hey, are calls going down? Are we hearing as much about this? Is it causing the same problems? And so closing the loop, and that CX isn't just part one, the client experience isn't a portion of it, it's the full piece of it, and then continuing to come back to those moments and making sure it's true. And industries are changing, and something that was once a great client experience, we know, can all of a sudden change really quickly because someone else has set a new standard. And as much as we think of the financial space, we're not being held to the client experiences of other banks and other FIs. We're being held to the experiences that they're getting from any app possible. So don't just look at your competitors, look at the entire technology space, and that's what you're being held accountable to.
Absolutely. Well, and I with a history there, I've seen more things come out of a call listening session, more change. As long as you can support it with data to say this wasn't a one-off. I mean, This is one of a series, if you will. But absolutely. So you hit on it a little bit, measuring.
Yeah.
Measuring the success of these kind of programs. So how do you tackle the measurement aspect?
I think there's some that are a little bit more cut and dry than others. Yes, if this is a broken experience, have we fixed the experience and therefore causing less friction? That's easier to see. Obviously, I think from a marketer, where experience comes to life is how people your overall NPS ratings and like really looking into that. And are you able to, have, strong real-time NPS, your NPS is like your client satisfaction score, and your long-term loyalty is also going to be a big part of that. It's not the short-term measurement, but you're definitely going to see if your clients are sticking around, your customers are sticking around, that says something about the experience that you're delivering. And I would also say really digging into those unhappy experiences. It's inevitable that something's not going to go right, but how you respond as a brand and how you respond as a company, that's your opportunity to also build that loyalty and measure that experience. Have you taken something that used to take 2 months and have you brought it down to a few weeks and make people feel like they're connected through the entire process, that they understand that they're being cared for and thought of, through that space and through that time.
Awesome. Well, we're going to have time for questions here as well, so be thinking about the questions to ask, Brittany. But I wanted to flip it, because we kind of were, several questions in a row, we're talking about what does marketing do to go partner with CX? Yeah. So if some CX folks out here don't have a great relationship with the marketing, tell them what you'd want them to do, and potentially their marketing leader would want them to do to create that partnership.
For sure. I think, as I noted earlier, often marketing is the brand stewards throughout the business, but becoming the brand advocate in your area is every marketing leader's dream. They want brand advocates throughout the business. They want the person who's standing up and saying, hey, does this feel on brand? Does this feel right? And often some of that is rewinding and saying, do I actually understand the brand promises? Do I understand, they're not just the nice thing that are said on a stage, typically by leaders at the beginning of the year. Like, what does it mean? And make your marketing leaders dig down and explain. It probably came from research. It probably came from information. It probably came from client feedback, why those promises or why those values were created that way. So digging in and having that understanding of the why can hopefully help, make you a brand advocate, but help you push and understand as to how your CX can deliver upon, how the client experience can deliver upon those promises. And, finding those examples, those tangible examples to then bring to your team. How can they bring that forward? And I think it has to be a constant, ongoing two-way communication. I spoke to it earlier, and it's so true that just making sure that you're, I think it's all businesses and all departments, making sure you're all talking the same language when it comes to your segments and who you're talking to. It can really easy get disconnected, and then all of a sudden you realize that we're not all on the same page, and it's so important to have that connection, I would say, especially with your client experience teams and your and other leaders.
Yeah, and I think even to that extent, another way too, in addition to that, is ask about what's important to marketing, which is brand perception. So to that point, on the calls, what should we be looking for to think about the brand perception? Yeah. And that could create dialogue back and forth. So at least it engages that conversation.
Absolutely. And if you're excited about something, tell marketing. Because chances are they're going to be excited about it too, and maybe there's an opportunity to incorporate it. We get excited as teams, and sometimes we don't share those things outwards. And if there is that space, there might be an opportunity to make more from it, to talk about it, to build it out more as part of the brand, or use it as examples at minimum to say, hey, this is where we deliver. And then when you're having those conversations, we can say, we want more of this because this is how it's delivering on our brand promise.
All right. Let's open up to questions. The audience, who's got questions for Brittany? Over here.
Hi, thanks very much for taking us through that. I'm Maria Gregory. I work at CIBC. I just wanted to kind of go back to your comments around being sure you share your updates, changes from a client experience standpoint. And you use the example of Domino's, which is fantastic. But we're in a pretty risk-averse industry, and we don't necessarily want to highlight our foibles. So I'm wondering if you've got a good example in financial services where companies done a nice job of sharing maybe something that wasn't great, and they kind of made it into a marketing moment and kind of came out with a winner there.
For sure. I think I think there's less the individual ones, but I do think there are those who holistically are constantly updating their experiences. And I know they've been on the, not unfortunately, but Simple's been a conversation, obviously, as many people look for. They're constantly iterating and changing, and they're constantly growing and making those changes and updates. And I would say speaking more broadly to changes that they've made, as an example. And while I don't have lots of direct examples, I've seen it, and I think the reason it doesn't always sound like someone admitting in error, it's always spun to the positive, is we've now introduced this, is what always happens. But I think that's why there's a white space of opportunity that FIs haven't played into as much as other areas. Whereas I think you do look in the retail, you can look in places where people are willing to say, hey, we made this thing, but we've made it better. FI space, because we're so risk averse, often don't want to admit, like, this wasn't a great experience, but it's now better. Instead, they go really big and just tout it as, no, it's amazing. And that's the difference I've seen.
Other questions? Up front over here.
Leslie with customer service at GoEasy. You talked about measuring, and again, as someone who advocates for the frontline staff, one of the ways marketing tends to ask us to measure is add steps, right? Tag the call so we know what was said. Track for us manually how many calls you had today about this new product we put out. What are ways that you, as kind of from marketing down, have found ways to kind of track that information, but not add kind of the volume of work to a frontline team?
It's tough. I think, like everyone, the ideal space is that I thought I was going to get the entire way through without saying this, but I feel like this is where AI may eventually come into play and make tagging more easy, because it would be great that we could say, hey, let's pull every call that was about this and listen and understand it. Whereas you are relying on the front end staff right now to say, like, this was a call about X topic, to be able to pull that together. As I think I kind of used in my example, it wasn't getting all of the calls, but it was having those from the front line pulling some information. So it's not everything, but at least it's some context about specific areas, I think can be easier to help alleviate some of it. But also I think there is the side of just informal conversation and marketers being able to sit down with some of the frontline staff. Because I think once you chat with folks in person, the stories will come out. It's, every other day I get a call about why. And maybe that's not coming through in grabbing that and, that tagging, but if you chat with the teams, they're gonna know what are the pain points. And so I think as marketers, having those relationships and not being, we sit over here, you sit over here, like coming together and actually just asking questions. And I think, again, I've been spoiled in being in some smaller businesses where that's, I feel like, a lot more open and welcomed, whereas I know sometimes the bigger you get, a little bit harder it is. But those are really important conversations to have and can be one of the informal ways to kind of glean those insights and understand, are you causing challenges or making things better?
Yeah, and that is a great ROI opportunity for project work too. The use case itself, to say, all right, well, how long, what amount of time is it adding to the contact center employee? Well, that's got a cost to it. And then, how quickly could it make up for some tech? So, and that's a huge use case to be used, and goes right back to going right back to IT saying, hey, you got to solve this. We got to make that happen. So, last questions. Got time for probably one more. All right. Well, Brittany, thank you so much.
Thanks so much,
I appreciate it. And everybody, let's thank Brittany.
Thanks so much, all.